Megillat Esther and the character of Mordechai specifically invite us to examine how we see ourselves at this moment in history as being responsible for both centers of Jewish civilization. The first, of course, Medinat Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, our ancestral homeland, and the second being the United States of America, which has been a wonderful host for our people for a long time. The Megillah is called Megillat Hagolah because it focuses entirely upon a narrative that takes place outside the land of Israel. It's uniquely so the only book in Tanakh that has no explicit reference to Eretz Yisrael. And nevertheless, there might be a character in that of Mordechai which points us towards Eretz Yisrael in implicit ways. There are different lenses through which to view the character of Mordechai. The classic traditional lens is as a religious role model, as a scholar, a member of the Sanhedrin who was a linguist, who used his abilities of knowing different languages to uncover the plot of Bigtan and Teresh to kill Achashverosh. And we see from there that Mordechai was an exemplar of religious leadership. He was a pious person. He was loved by all his people, as the Megillah concludes. And this is the kind of figure, the kind of role model that we want our kids to be looking up to, and why we dress our little boys up to be like Mordechai. That's what we would call the first traditional approach to Mordechai. A second approach is a little bit more bold, perhaps a little bit more critical, which sees Mordechai as somebody who was an assimilationist. In our introduction to Mordechai, we see that he is called Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish ish Yemini. Yair, Shimi, and Kish are all Hebrew names, but Mordechai is not. It's the name, as we're familiar, of a pagan god. Mordechai accepts, or maybe his parents at least, being third or fourth generation from the exile from Israel, they name their child a name after Marduk, the pagan god, which is a signal of the acculturation that Mordechai underwent. And Mordechai, even though he's Mishneh LaMelech, he's powerful at the end of the story, we don't know much about his lineage or about the Jewish community in Persia because it seems to evaporate. And so another way of looking at Mordechai is not as sort of the classic traditional religious exemplar, but somebody who cares about his people, but ultimately is caring more about the local diaspora Jewish community, and that eventually, after time, his own identity weakens and is no longer. I think the more holistic and realistic view of Mordechai is as a dual loyalist. And this is the model that I think speaks to our political moment when the discussion of dual loyalty has risen in American conversation. Mordechai is on the list of individuals, both in Sefer Nehemiah and in Sefer Ezra, of people who returned to restart the Jewish Commonwealth and to begin the building of the second Beit HaMikdash. We're not sure if it's the same Mordechai as in the Mordechai of Megillat Esther, but if it is the same, which is the way that some understand it, then it seems that Mordechai was a Zionist. He is somebody who made Aliyah, whether it was at the beginning of his life or at the end of his life. It seems that he did play a role in helping Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah with the Zionist project and with the Zionist Renaissance. Another midrash says that Mordechai actually helped the cause of the Zionists without actually moving to Israel, but by mobilizing resources within the Persian government to help inspire support. The midrash says that the son of Achashverosh and Esther was none other than Daryavesh. Daryavesh was the Persian king who supported the building of the second Beit HaMikdash, and not only supported, but gave his own resources to ensure that it would be a dignified and beautiful edifice. Where was this spark coming from? Why all of a sudden, after Achashverosh was against the building of the Beit HaMikdash by the Jews living in Yerushalayim, why did his son turn around and support the cause? Perhaps it's because of the influence of his mother Esther and Mordechai, his great uncle Mordi, who convinced him that it was within the scope of Persian interests to have a flourishing Jewish community in the land of Israel. And he mobilized the diaspora Jewish community as well as the Persian government, a seat of global power, to support the establishment of the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. From here we see that Mordechai, whether it was at different stages in his life, was able to be a dual loyalist by living in Persia and contributing with his talents and skills to the diaspora Jewish community there, and then either at the beginning or at the end of his life also using his skills and his talents as a scholar, as a linguist, to support the Zionist cause. Or we see that even within diaspora he was able to do things that were both in the interest of the local Jewish community, the non-Jewish local government, and also in the interest of the Jews living in Israel. I hope that we can take inspiration from Mordechai and see a positive example of dual loyalty, that it's possible for us as Jews living in Sharon, Massachusetts, this year to see our allegiances between America and Israel aligned in such a way that we are honored, that we are inspired to contribute to both, and that we don't feel any sort of disloyalty or any sort of contradiction between our interests and our values in supporting both a flourishing American Jewish community and, of course, a flourishing of the Jews in the land of Israel. Purim Sameach. I look forward to seeing you in Shul later on.